Ever since Endgame ended, one question has always been on people's minds. Why didn't Thanos just double the resources in the universe? And it's a pretty reasonable thing to ask. The guy literally has the reality stone. Hell, why stop at doubling them? Why not just make it so that resources never become scarce again? But they don't call him the Mad Titan for nothing. And believe it or not, the reason he didn't do this doesn't have anything to do with the stones. He's literally just that psychotic. And today, we're exploring that psychosis in detail, wandering through the mind of the Mad Titan and the Marvel writers to answer the fandom's biggest question: Thanos' motivations. So, a lot of people think that this was a huge plot hole and that the writers basically ignored the possibility of him doubling the resources because otherwise we wouldn't have a villain or a conflict to follow. But it's not a plot hole at all. You see, let's go over the definition of a plot hole. A plot hole is an illogical gap, contradiction, or continuity error in a story that breaks the established rules of the narrative. None of what Thanos did was illogical, a contradiction, or a continuity error, but you need to understand, it wasn't wrong according to his logic. According to ours, sure, why not? But Thanos isn't a pacifist, diplomatic, or economic guy that's trying to solve the problem of scarcity. He's a madman with a messiah complex, and those are not my words. It's the words of the creators themselves. Take it from screenwriter Stephen McFeely and director Anthony Russo. I'm now going to read some quotes directly from both of them. People have asked us why Thanos didn't just use the stones to double the resources in the universe, and clearly, he is not interested. That's what Anthony Russo had to say. And why isn't he interested? Well, McFeely had an answer for us. It's about free will. That doesn't solve the problem. We're just going to get there millions of years from now. To Thanos, doubling the resources is just a temporary band-aid. But here's the ultimate cosmic irony. His own plan is a million times worse. Thanos thinks he's playing the long game, but let's look at how his logic holds up against actual reality. If you wiped out half of today's global population, we'd be left with roughly 4 billion people, sending us back to the population levels of the 1970s. But because of exponential growth, it only took humanity 50 years to double our population and get right back to this exact crisis point. Think about that. Thanos rejected a plan that would buy the universe millions of years just to execute a horrific mass genocide that only buys us 50. His plan, from every angle imaginable, does not make sense, and that's why for his character, it makes perfect sense. What do I mean? Like I said, Thanos is not actually interested in the logical solution here. He's someone who desperately wants to be right. And again, I'm trying not to dump my own fan interpretation on you guys. Joe Russo literally confirmed this. He expanded upon Thanos' motivations, and what I found out when I read that exposition is that at his core, Thanos is someone with a really bruised ego. What happened on Titan was something that changed Thanos at his very core. When faced with extinction, Thanos essentially offered genocide as a solution.
And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman.
Obviously, everyone had the natural reaction to telling him he's completely insane and cast him out. But here's the thing. To somebody with a messiah complex that's convinced that they are right, being right is one of the worst things that can happen to him and everyone around him, because then you have a madman that feels validated in his insanity. Titan perished exactly the way Thanos predicted it would. He then became utterly consumed by a single desperate need to prove to the cosmos that he was right. And this quote from Joe Russo really cements that idea. He was told no to an idea that he had, and then he was proved right to himself. Co-director Joe Russo explained, his messianic complex, he is now committed to following through on the idea he had many, many years ago. He's not a stable individual. This is why he never considered logical alternatives like doubling resources everywhere. Sure, it wouldn't have been a permanent solution, but it would have literally delayed the problem by so many years that the universe could have figured out a way to solve limited resources. But Thanos didn't want a bloodless, efficient fix. He wanted validation. He wanted the universe to suffer the exact cost that he calculated, force them to survive the trauma, and then look back in awe and gratitude towards their violent savior. This misunderstood genius was just too ahead of his time. There were actually even more problems with the snap than just the fact that it delayed things, and not by a lot. You see, Thanos snapped away half the people in the world, but left the universe with none of the infrastructure or architecture it needed to leverage the new abundance of resources. Look at it this way. Let's assume you're in some planet with like 2 years worth of water left, right? And the planet next to you has around 100 years of it left. Now, some guy decides to snap his fingers and suddenly that planet's population doesn't exist anymore. You'd think that's a win, more water for you guys, right? Yeah, except your planet was probably busy just surviving day to day. Plus, there would probably be a lot of infighting over the limited water you guys have, and that leads to a lot of civil unrest. Do you even have an organized enough society to plan a mission to the planet and get its water? Do you guys even have spaceships? Can you guys even pilot one? How are you bringing that water back? Do you have fuel? These are all questions Thanos had no answers for, because despite what he tells Gamora, balance isn't this guy's number one priority. It's being right. This was never a plot hole because it was literally a natural outcome of his character, a madman who was seeking the ultimate vindication, and the narrative always stayed within the character's function and the impact it would have on the story. But now that we've debunked why the doubling resources thing would never have worked out or even been possible, let's get into a couple more reasons why the snap is actually one of the most hypocritical things somebody has ever done in Marvel. His entire thing was saving the universe from scarcity. He always made it sound like he was doing people a favor everywhere by carrying this burden on his own, talking about how hard choices require strong wills.
The hardest choices require the strongest wills.
And literally sacrificing his own daughter to make it seem like this is some really hard ordeal that only he can do, one that is so morally justified that he is literally even willing to sacrifice his loved ones in pursuit of it. And to his credit, he sold that lie really well, even going as far as destroying the Infinity Stones when he was done with them so nobody could reverse what he had done.
Where are the stones?
Gone. Reduced to atoms.
You used them 2 days ago.
He used the stones to destroy the stones. The universe required correction. After that, the stones served no purpose.
But the thing is, and this is the real kicker, the snap was extremely literal. It erased half of every kind of life. Ants, cows, plants, crops, mammals, fish, anything that could be classified as alive under whatever metric Thanos or the Infinity Stones had was wiped out. And that's both dialogue from the movies and confirmation from Kevin Feige himself. In an interview with Kevin Feige, Russ Fisher of birth.movies.death asked Feige the exact specifics of his universal genocide. Kevin only had one response. Yes, all life. This man didn't even solve scarcity. He literally did not even solve the problem. He has been on a universal murdering spree to take out 50% of the life that was remaining in the universe, but in doing so, he left the universe with 50% less resources to use. This is so unfathomably hypocritical that I actually don't even think I have a word for it. And this is why I always prefer the comics Thanos to the movies. The movies do a really good job of making it seem like he has some seriously homicidal but tortured logic. Like somewhere deep down, he has a point. And he does. Scarcity is a huge thing. It's a problem that's currently screwing up our own real world as well. But at least comics Thanos was, to my knowledge, pretty straightforward. He had a huge one-sided crush on Mistress Death, and he was willing to do anything for her. And I can respect that more than I can respect being a literal two-faced liar. If you have 100 people and 100 cows, and suddenly you have 50 people or 50 cows, man, that's still the same problem. In behind-the-scenes interviews, screenwriters Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely basically confirmed that they didn't exactly structure Infinity War as an Avengers movie. In fact, they wrote it as Thanos' personal hero's journey. As Markus put it, villain is a derogatory term that Thanos wouldn't agree with. In his mind, again, he is some tragic hero, a martyr to the cause. He wanted the universe to suffer because, to him, suffering is the lesson. Those are pretty much all the actual reasons why the doubling resources thing is something Thanos would never have done, and so much of it is rooted in his psyche. We also went over some problems with the snap itself, but there are also a lot of logistical issues with the doubling resources plan, and two of the biggest ones that I can think of are resource wars and cosmic micromanagement. Let's start with the resource wars, and let's take a look at our own real world for a perfect example. There is an abundance of resources on this planet, enough to pretty much make life okay for everyone. The recent hate against billionaires is pretty much this concept taken to the extreme. When there are more than enough resources for everyone, people tend to start getting really greedy. Love thy neighbor sounds good on paper, but in practice, it's more like steal from thy neighbor and ensure thy grass is always greener. If resources simply doubled overnight, then there's literally no guarantee that the living beings of the Marvel Universe would logically handle this abundance. In fact, you could easily just see empires like the Kree raiding planet after planet for all the extra loot that just appeared out of nowhere. Actually, I think that this entire issue wouldn't be present in the snap because people would just be really distraught. We saw this happen 5 years after the snap. Earth wasn't striving, it was stuck in global trauma. Empty sports stadiums, abandoned neighborhoods, and support groups of broken people completely unable to function. You could probably expect the same everywhere else. But another problem with the doubling resources idea is that Thanos may not even be capable of doing it properly. Look at Doctor Strange. It took him a lot of time and training to be able to use the time stone as effectively as he did, but Thanos didn't really have that time or training. He kept hunting one stone after the other, and the moment he got them all, he immediately snapped. I think doing something as complicated as doubling the universes would be extremely difficult for anyone except a very experienced user of the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, this is part of just fan theory because there's nothing that says the Infinity Gauntlet doesn't just actualize the user's will. But let's assume a hypothetical scenario like this. Your planet has 500 million trees. Suddenly, in a flash, it now has 1 billion trees. But does it have the space for those trees? And if it does, is the climate okay, now that it has so many more trees? The ecosystems and animals? I know the writers could easily write around something like this if they wanted to, but the thing is, these are just some of the first concerns that you'd have to deal with if you're doubling resources. It's not enough to just snap your fingers and multiply everything by ×2. It needs to be intentional, methodical, and planned, and I think Thanos literally just isn't smart enough to do that. I mean, who really is? Except maybe the Celestials? Those guys have been doing this stuff for millions of years.
Oh, no. No. No, 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 don't do that!
So, all in all, not only is the doubling resources idea something Thanos would literally never consider, but it's also something that I think would be extremely difficult to implement. And now you're going to stop me and ask, but earlier you said it was better than the snap, and it would delay the problem by millions of years. Yes, and I stand by that. But the thing is, it needs to be planned out. And Thanos, as we have seen time and time again, is not one for plans. He's just not good at planning out anything that doesn't involve killing and ruining people's lives. This man doesn't know how to cultivate. Oh, you could say he could just use the Mind Stone and gain the intelligence needed to do that, or formulate a plan through it, and I agree with you. But that leads us back to the same problem I've gone over in this video extensively. Then he wouldn't be the Mad Titan, Thanos.
I am inevitable.
This is actually one of the most hotly debated things in the Infinity Saga and Marvel in general. But one thing I can't agree on is this being a plot hole. There's just no way staying in character equals a plot hole. I also think it's pretty cool that the writers went out of their way to clarify Thanos' mindset so much. That exposition really helped me understand the character better, and I hope this video did the same for you. See you guys next time.